You reach out to touch a fox kit and it freezes. Every muscle wired against you, eyes locked, breath held. You've done nothing. It doesn't matter. That freeze, that pure, unbreakable no, is the answer to a question almost nobody asks. Because humans have tried this exact trick, turning a wild animal into a willing partner, on roughly 148 large mammal species. 14 said yes. The other 134 told us where to go. And 10,000 years of patience, breeding, and pure human stubbornness has not moved that number by a single animal. Here's the strange part. When you list the 14 dogs, cats, cows, pigs, sheep, goats, horses, donkeys, water buffalo, camels, llamas, alpacas, reindeer, yaks, they don't obviously belong together. A cow and a cat have almost nothing in common, but when you list the failures, a pattern snaps into focus. The evolutionary biologist Jared Diamond gave it a name, the Anna Karenina principle, borrowed from Tolstoy's line about happy and unhappy families. Every domesticable animal is domesticable in the same way. Every undomesticable one is undomesticable in its own way. To make the cut, a species has to clear 6 invisible bars: cheap food, fast growth, breeding in captivity, calm around humans, submission to a hierarchy, and crucially, not having the personality of a hand grenade. Miss even one, and the whole project collapses. Take the first bar. To domesticate an animal, you have to feed it, and the math has to work. A cow converts about 10 pounds of grass into a single pound of beef. Inefficient, but grass is essentially free. Try that with a carnivore and the equation detonates. You'd need 10 pounds of meat to grow 1 pound of tiger. And where exactly is an ancient farmer sourcing that? Nowhere. This is why almost every domesticated large mammal is a herbivore, and why the 2 carnivores that made the list, dogs and cats, earn their keep on scraps you would have thrown out anyway. Now stack the second bar on top, growth rate. An elephant needs 22 months just to be born, and another 15 years to reach working size. No ancient farmer plants a seed that grows for 2 decades, which means every elephant you have ever seen at a temple, a logging camp, or a circus was not domesticated. It was captured, wild-caught, trained young, and never bred into a stable domestic line. Because the third bar breaks more species than the first 2 combined. The animal has to be willing to breed while you are watching. This sounds absurd until you meet a cheetah. Cheetahs are gorgeous, trainable, and easy to feed. The Mughal emperor Akbar the Great in 16th century India kept thousands of them in his personal stables. And across his entire reign, historical records document exactly 1 litter ever produced in captivity. 1. Cheetahs need long, complex mating rituals across huge territories, and a palace enclosure is not a courtship. Every hunting cheetah in history had to be recaught from the wild. Now the 4th bar, panic. Gazelles will run themselves to death against fences. Deer, after 10,000 years of humans trying, are still essentially wild. You cannot farm a nervous system that keeps hurling itself into the wall. And then there's the 5th bar, which is the one that separates a horse from a zebra. On paper, these 2 should be interchangeable. Same shape, same size, same grass, same continent. In 19th century England, Walter Rothschild actually drove a carriage pulled by 4 zebras through the streets of London to prove it could be done. And it could, barely. Because zebras are, to put it politely, monsters. They bite and refuse to let go. They kick hard enough to kill a lion. They have a ducking reflex so precise that they cannot be reliably lassoed. You throw the rope, they drop their head at the last instant, the rope hits nothing. More zookeepers are injured every year by zebras than by tigers. Bar 6 is quieter, but just as absolute. The animal has to accept a leader. Herd species with a strict social ladder can transfer that instinct onto a human without noticing. Territorial loners can't, which is why cows shuffle into a barn on their own, and antelopes do not. But the strangest thing about all 6 bars is that we know exactly what it takes to break them. In 1959, a Soviet geneticist named Dmitry Belyaev started an experiment that was officially a fur farm and privately one of the most audacious biology projects of the 20th century. Working at the Institute of Cytology and Genetics in Novosibirsk, Belyaev took wild-caught silver foxes, normal, aggressive, will-take-a-finger-off silver foxes, and selected them for one trait, not fur color, not size, tameness. Every generation, his team, led by his colleague Lyudmila Trut, kept only the foxes that flinched least when a human hand approached. And by the 10th generation, a heartbeat in evolutionary time, the foxes started behaving like puppies. They wagged their tails. They whimpered for attention. They rolled onto their backs. But here is the part nobody predicted. The tame foxes also started to look different. Their ears drooped, their coats grew patches of white, their skulls shortened. Belyayev had not selected for any of this. Yet the entire package of domesticated animal traits, the same package stamped across every dog and pig and cow on Earth, arrived free with the tameness. Somewhere inside the fox genome, one switch was quietly controlling dozens of traits at once. Because when biologists finally sat down and asked what that switch actually is, the answer went somewhere dark. In 2014, evolutionary biologists Adam Wilkins, Richard Wrangham, and Tecumseh Fitch published a paper laying out the neural crest hypothesis. Neural crest cells are a small cluster of embryonic cells that migrate through the body of an unborn animal, building pigment cells, cartilage in the ears, part of the jaw, and, critically, parts of the adrenal glands, the engine room of the fear response. When you select for tameness, you are quietly selecting for animals whose neural crest cells migrate less. And when those cells migrate less, everything downstream shrinks a little. Smaller adrenal glands, so less fear. Less pigment, so patches of white. Floppy ears, shorter snouts. Smaller brains. Yes, smaller brains. Every domesticated species you have ever met has, on average, 10 to 15% less brain than its wild ancestor. Domestication is not friendship. It is a controlled, multi-generational form of biological arrested development. Animals engineered to remain in a permanent childhood. And the same pattern shows up in exactly one more species. Us. Modern humans, compared to our Neanderthal cousins, have shorter faces, smaller teeth, about 10% less brain, longer childhoods, lower baseline aggression. This is the self-domestication hypothesis, and Richard Wrangham, the same Wrangham from the Neural Crest paper, has spent decades arguing that we did to ourselves over the last 300,000 years exactly what we later did to wolves. The overly hostile ones were killed, exiled, or never bred. So the fox kit that froze under your hand isn't the strange one in this story. You are. You're the animal whose ancestors were quietly bred out of that same freeze, generation after generation, until reaching out to a stranger stopped feeling like death. And once you see it that way, the whole list flips. The 14 were never the species that gave in to us. They were the species whose biology already met us halfway, long before a single human ever knelt beside a wolf pup. Every other animal on Earth is still standing on the other side of that wall. Not because they hate us, but because their neural crest never quieted. So the next time you reach towards something wild and watch it lock up under your hand, remember what you're really seeing. Not fear of you, just an animal that never ran the experiment we ran on ourselves. 14 said yes. One of them was us.